Why are some countries so incredibly wealthy while others, sometimes right next door, are just stuck in poverty? It's one of the biggest questions out there, right? Well, the answer might be hiding in plain sight, along one single, solitary border fence. I want you to think about something. What if the most powerful wall separating people wasn't made of steel or concrete at all, but of invisible rules? You know, the rules of the game, the ones that decide who gets a fair shot, who gets protection, and who just gets left behind. That's the huge idea we're diving into today. And to really see this in action, we have to go to a place that is literally one city split right down the middle, Nogales. One half is in Arizona in the US, and the other half is in Sonora, Mexico. We're talking about the same people, the same culture, the same geography, but their day-to-day lives, they couldn't be more different. And when you look at the numbers, it is just staggering. On the American side, you've got a decent average income, you've got access to good schools, public safety, basically the foundations you need for a good life. But then you step just a few feet away, across that invisible line, and incomes just plummet. Inequality skyrockets. And the basic systems people should be able to count on, they're just not as reliable. Here's what it boils down to. An average person working in Nogales, Arizona, makes about 5 times more than someone in Nogales, Sonora. 5 times. This isn't across the world. This is across a fence. These are people who can literally wave to each other. So, this is the big mystery, isn't it? If it's not the people, and it's not the land or the culture, then what in the world is it? What creates this massive, massive gap? Well, to answer that, we've got to go back in time. And our story really begins with a deep historical wound, one that completely redrew the map and basically reset the future for 2 entire nations. Okay, so picture this, it's the 1800s. Mexico has just won its independence from Spain, but things are shaky. The US, on the other hand, is in full-on expansion mode, manifest destiny, and it decides to annex Texas. This kicks off a war that is just devastating for Mexico. It ends with a treaty where Mexico is forced to give up a huge chunk of its land. And the timing was just tragic. 1 year later, gold is discovered on the very land Mexico just lost. And the scale of this loss, it's hard to even wrap your head around. Mexico had to hand over 55% of its territory. And listen, this wasn't just empty land. This was the future home of the California gold rush, the Texas oil boom, basically the rocket fuel for America's rise as an economic superpower. This really reframes the whole thing, doesn't it? It wasn't just a border dispute. It was a massive transfer of future wealth. As the philosopher Diego Ruzarin puts it, maybe the foundation of that prosperity wasn't just about hard work, but about a very strategic and very forceful land grab. But here's the thing. As critical as that war was, it doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain why, even before all of that, the 2 places were already on such different paths. That conflict didn't create the difference, it just exposed a much deeper divide that had been growing for centuries. So let's talk about the fundamental operating system each of these societies was built on. It all starts with 2 totally different colonial blueprints. Okay, so economists have these 2 key concepts. First, you have what are called inclusive institutions. Think of these as rules that protect private property for everybody, that enforce laws fairly, and that actually encourage people to invest and come up with new ideas. They tend to create widespread prosperity. And then you have the opposite, extractive institutions. These are designed to do one thing, funnel wealth from the masses to a tiny, powerful elite. And these 2 models, they map almost perfectly onto the colonial history of the Americas. In the British colonies, settlers fought for and demanded self-governance, creating local assemblies and laws from the ground up. But in Spanish America, it was a totally different story. It was a rigid, top-down system controlled from afar, where land and power were given only to a chosen few. One built a foundation for participation, the other a foundation for extraction. And these different starting points, they didn't just stay in the past. They kickstarted these incredibly powerful feedback loops, virtuous circles of prosperity and vicious circles of poverty. And those loops are still shaping life in Nogales and everywhere else today. So think about it. In an inclusive system, a virtuous circle, when you trust that the rules are fair and your property is safe, what do? You invest, you start a business, you educate your kids. That drives innovation and growth, and everybody benefits. But in an extractive system, a vicious circle, that trust is gone. Corruption is everywhere. So you operate in the shadows, in the informal economy. Why would you innovate if someone powerful can just come and take it all away?
Wealth gets stuck at the top, and the cycle of poverty just keeps on spinning.
Which brings us right back to where we started. That fence in Nogales, it's not just separating two countries. It's a real, physical line in the sand that marks two profoundly different paths, two different institutional rulebooks forged over hundreds of years. On one side, a legacy of inclusion that, for all its flaws, created a framework for prosperity. On the other, a legacy of extraction that has concentrated wealth and choked off opportunity for so many. So in the end, prosperity isn't just about geography or natural resources or even culture. It's about the rules we humans create. And that leaves us with one last massive question. If these institutions, these rules of the game, were made by people, can't they be remade by people? The answer to that question could change everything, not just for the people of Nogales, but for all of us.